The rain hammered against the windows of Miller's diner, like angry fists demanding entry. Emily Parker wiped down the same counter for the third time, her tired eyes watching the clock above the coffee machine tick toward closing time. At 26, she had already spent 5 years serving coffee and dreams to truckers, night shift workers, and anyone else who wandered into this forgotten corner of Millbrook. Her reflection in the window showed a woman worn thin by long hours and small tips, but her eyes still held that spark of kindness that made regular customers ask specifically for her section. Thunder rolled across the sky as Emily gathered the last few plates from table 6. That's when she saw them. For small figures huddled beneath the broken streetlight outside, their thin frames pressed together against the brick wall like frightened birds. The oldest couldn't have been more than 12, the youngest barely 7. Their clothes hung in tatters, soaked through from the relentless downpour. What stopped Emily's heart wasn't just their obvious hunger or the way they shivered in the cold. It was the look in their eyes, that hollow, desperate gaze of children who had learned too young that the world could be cruel. Emily's hands trembled as she set down the plates. She had grown up poor herself, knew what it felt like to go to bed with an empty stomach, while other kids talked about what their mothers packed for lunch. But these girls had something worse than poverty. They had nothing. No mother to worry about them. No father to come looking when they didn't come home. They were invisible to everyone except Emily. Without thinking, Emily unlocked the front door and stepped into the storm. The rain soaked through her uniform in seconds, but she barely noticed. The girls looked up at her with wide, frightened eyes, ready to run at the first sign of trouble. People had probably yelled at them before, chased them away from doorsteps and warm places where they might find a moment's peace. "Hey there," Emily said softly, crouching down to their level. "You girls look pretty cold. How about coming inside where it's warm?" The oldest girl, with matted brown hair and fierce protective instincts, stepped in front of the others. "We don't got money for food, lady. We ain't stealing nothing either." Emily's heart broke a little more. "I know you're not thieves, sweetheart. I'm Emily, and I work here. When was the last time you girls ate something hot?" The question hung in the air like the storm clouds overhead. The youngest girl, with blonde hair that might have been beautiful if it weren't so dirty, whispered something to the oldest. Emily caught the words 3 days, and felt her chest tighten with rage at a world that could let children suffer like this. "Come on inside," Emily said, standing up and extending her hand. No strings attached. Just some food and a warm place to sit for a while. The girls exchanged glances, having a silent conversation that spoke of survival instincts honed by necessity. Finally, the oldest girl took Emily's hand, and the others followed like a small parade of hope walking through the rain. Inside the diner, Emily sat them in a corner booth and turned up the heat. She brought towels from the back room, helping them dry off while trying not to stare at the bruises on their arms or the way their ribs showed through their thin shirts. In the kitchen, she worked with quiet efficiency, preparing plates of everything she could find: meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans, fresh rolls with butter. Real food that would stick to their ribs and give them strength. When she placed the plates in front of them, the girls stared as if they were seeing a mirage. The youngest one reached out tentatively, then looked at Emily for permission. "Go ahead, honey. Eat as much as you want." What happened next would stay with Emily for the rest of her life. These 4 little girls, who had probably learned not to trust anyone, fell on that food with desperate gratitude. They ate like they might never get another chance. But they also shared, the oldest making sure the youngest got the biggest pieces of meat, the middle girls passing rolls back and forth. Even in their hunger, they took care of each other. As they ate, Emily learned their names. Sarah was the oldest at 12, fierce and protective. Then came Maria at 10, quiet but observant. Jessica was 8, with expressive eyes that seemed to hold too much sadness. And little Amy, only 7, who hadn't spoken a word but smiled shyly when Emily refilled her milk glass. "Where are your parents?" Emily asked gently, though she suspected the answer. "Dead," Sarah said simply, as if announcing the weather. "Been in foster care, but we keep running away. They split us up, see? We're sisters. Not by blood, but sisters just the same. Nobody's gonna separate us." Emily nodded, understanding completely. These girls had found each other in the system, formed their own family when the world failed them. They were survivors, but they were also children who needed someone to believe in them. As the storm raged outside, Emily made a decision that would change everything. She didn't know how she was going to manage it, didn't know where the money would come from or what people would say. But looking at these four brave little girls, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She wasn't going to let them face the world alone anymore. The next morning brought sunshine and doubt in equal measure. Emily stared at her bank account balance on her phone screen, the numbers seeming even smaller after her impulsive promise to help the girls. $87.34 stood between her and empty until her next paycheck. But when she remembered Amy's shy smile and Sarah's fierce determination to keep her makeshift family together, the numbers stopped matching. She found them exactly where she expected, behind the diner, sleeping in the narrow alley between two dumpsters. They had arranged cardboard boxes as makeshift beds, with Sarah positioned strategically at the opening where she could see anyone approaching. Even in sleep, she was protecting her sisters. Emily approached quietly, not wanting to startle them. Sarah's eyes snapped open at the first sound of footsteps, her body tensing for flight or fight. When she recognized Emily, her shoulders relaxed slightly, but the wariness remained. "Morning, girls," Emily said softly. "How about some breakfast?" This became their routine. Every morning before her shift, Emily would bring them food. Every evening after work, she would sit with them, helping with homework they'd scrounged from school dumpsters, teaching them to read using old newspapers and magazines. She bought them toothbrushes and soap with money she should have used for groceries. She found them clothes at thrift stores, carefully washing and mending each piece until they looked almost new. The transformation wasn't immediate, but it was real. Maria began speaking more, sharing stories about books she'd found in the library. Jessica started humming while they ate, little melodies that reminded Emily there was still joy buried beneath all that hurt. Amy finally spoke her first words to Emily after 2 weeks. "Thank you, Mama Emily." The name stuck. Mama Emily. It terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. But caring for 4 children on a waitress's salary meant sacrifices Emily hadn't anticipated. She gave up her small apartment, moving into a tiny studio above the hardware store where the rent was cheaper. She sold her car and walked everywhere, even in bad weather. Breakfast became black coffee and whatever was left over from the girls' meals. She took on double shifts when they were available, working until her feet bled in her worn-out shoes. The townspeople noticed, of course. Millbrook was too small for secrets. Mrs. Henderson from the grocery store would purse her lips when Emily counted out exact change for milk and bread. "Shame," she would whisper to other customers, wasting her money on strays when she can barely feed herself. At the bank, Mr. Carmichael would shake his head when Emily came in to cash her paycheck. "You know those children aren't your responsibility, Emily. There are systems in place for situations like this." But Emily knew what those systems had done to the girls already. Sarah had scars on her back from foster home, where discipline came with a belt. Maria had stopped talking for 6 months after being separated from her sisters. The system had failed them repeatedly, and Emily refused to let it happen again. The hardest part wasn't the money or the exhaustion. It was the moments when doubt crept in during the darkest hours of night. When she lay awake calculating grocery costs and wondering if she was strong enough for this. When well-meaning people told her she was throwing her life away on children who would never amount to anything. But then morning would come, and she would see Sarah helping Amy with her reading, or catch Maria sharing her sandwich with a hungry classmate at school. She would watch Jessica comfort another child who was crying, using the same gentle voice Emily used with them. These girls, who had every reason to be bitter and selfish, were becoming beacons of kindness and strength. Emily started keeping a journal, documenting their progress. Sarah's grades were improving steadily. She had a natural talent for math that amazed her teachers. Maria devoured books like they were water in a desert, often reading by streetlight when they couldn't afford electricity. Jessica had begun drawing, creating beautiful pictures of families and homes and dreams. Amy was learning to trust, slowly opening her heart to the love Emily offered freely. The neighbors who criticized Emily's choices didn't see the girls studying by candlelight when the power was shut off. They didn't witness the way the sisters shared everything equally, or how they would scrimp and save their few pennies to buy Emily a birthday card. They couldn't understand that these children, written off by society, were becoming remarkable young women precisely because someone had chosen to believe in them. Years passed in a blur of scraped knees and homework sessions, of midnight fevers and Christmas mornings made magical with gifts from the dollar store. Emily watched her girls grow taller and stronger, their eyes losing that haunted look and gaining something precious, hope. Sarah became the scholar, excelling in every subject and talking about college like it was actually possible. Maria developed a love for science, conducting experiments with household items and dreaming of becoming a doctor. Jessica's artistic talents blossomed. Her drawings evolved into paintings that captured beauty even in their struggling neighborhood. Amy, the baby of the group, showed signs of natural leadership, organizing neighborhood children into groups for cleanup projects and charity drives. Emily aged faster than she should have, her hair showing streaks of gray before her 30th birthday. Her hands were permanently stained from working extra shifts at the diner, and her back ached from sleeping on an old sofa, so the girls could have the only bed. But when she looked in the mirror, she saw something she'd never seen before: a mother. A real mother, who had chosen love over comfort, sacrifice over safety. The town continued to whisper, but Emily had stopped listening. She had found her purpose in 4 little girls who had needed someone to believe in them. What she didn't know was that her faith in them was about to be rewarded in ways she never could have imagined. 10 years had passed since that rainy night when Emily first brought the girls inside. Now 18, 20, 22, and 24, they were women with dreams bigger than Millbrook could contain. The small town that had once judged Emily for taking them and now watched with quiet amazement as the 4 orphans prepared to leave for colleges and opportunities none of them had thought possible. Sarah had earned a full scholarship to Harvard Business School, her exceptional grades and leadership experience making her a standout candidate. The girl who had once protected her sisters behind dumpsters was now preparing to enter one of the most prestigious universities in the country. Her acceptance letter still hung on Emily's refrigerator, the seal and letterhead making it look official and impossible. Maria had been accepted into Johns Hopkins pre-med program with financial aid that covered everything from tuition to textbooks. The quiet girl who once barely spoke was now discussing molecular biology and surgical procedures with a passion that left Emily breathless with pride. She had already been selected for a summer research program that would help her prepare for medical school. Jessica had received an art scholarship to the Rhode Island School of Design. Her portfolio, filled with paintings that captured both the struggles and beauty of their life together, had moved the admissions committee to tears. One professor had written that her work showed an extraordinary ability to find hope in darkness and translate human resilience into visual poetry. Amy, now 18 and the last to leave, had been accepted to Northwestern University's journalism program. The little girl who had barely whispered for her first year with Emily was now writing articles for the high school newspaper that were being republished in regional publications. Her essay about growing up with an accidental mother had won several statewide competitions. Emily stood in her tiny kitchen, now empty except for Amy's belongings, and tried to process how quiet the space felt. For a decade, this place had been filled with laughter, arguments, study sessions, and the constant background noise of 4 young women figuring out their lives. Now it felt hollow, like an echo chamber for memories. The departures had been harder than Emily had anticipated. Each goodbye had felt like losing a piece of her heart. Sarah's leaving day had been the worst, watching her oldest girl, the fierce protector who had become Emily's right hand in raising the others, pack her few belongings into a single suitcase. Sarah had tried to be strong, but when the taxi arrived to take her to the airport, she had broken down crying in Emily's arms. "I don't know how to be without you, Mama Emily," Sarah had whispered. "You saved us. You saved me." Emily had held her tight, memorizing the feel of her daughter's embrace. "You were never broken, sweetheart. You just needed someone to help you see how strong you already were." Maria's departure to Baltimore had been quieter, but no less emotional. The night before she left, she had sat with Emily on their old couch and talked about her plans to specialize in pediatric medicine. "I want to help kids like we were," she had said. "Kids who need someone to believe in them the way you believed in us." Jessica had left for Providence, with tears streaming down her face, clutching a portrait she had painted of all 5 of them together. "This goes with me everywhere," she had promised. "So you're always there when I need courage." And now it was just Emily and Amy, the baby who had grown into a confident young woman with fire in her eyes and dreams of changing the world through storytelling. Amy's departure for Chicago loomed just weeks away, and Emily was struggling to imagine what purpose her life would have once all her girls were gone. The financial struggles hadn't ended with the girls' success. If anything, they had intensified during the final years as Emily had stretched every dollar to help with application fees, SAT prep books, and the countless small expenses that came with preparing for college. She had sold her few pieces of jewelry, worked extra shifts until her body screamed in protest, and accepted help from the girls' teachers, who had quietly contributed to what they called the Emily Parker Scholarship Fund. Dr. Williams, the high school principal, had stopped by one evening during Amy's senior year. "Emily," he had said, "what you've done for these girls is remarkable. The entire faculty has watched them grow, and we all know it's because of you. We've all contributed to a fund to help with Amy's college expenses." Emily had been too overwhelmed to speak. The envelope he handed her contained $800 and a note signed by every teacher at Millbrook High, "For the woman who shows us daily what love in action looks like." But even with community support, Emily's own situation had deteriorated. The years of sacrifice had taken their toll on her health. She had developed chronic back pain from working long hours and sleeping on that old couch. A persistent cough that she couldn't shake made her shifts at the diner increasingly difficult. She had lost weight she couldn't afford to lose, and her clothes hung on her frame like fabric on a scarecrow. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her girls were thriving, succeeding beyond anyone's wildest dreams, while she seemed to be fading. But Emily had no regrets. Every sleepless night, every skipped meal, every sacrifice had been worth it to see Sarah's confidence as she discussed business strategies, Maria's excitement about medical discoveries, Jessica's joy when she created something beautiful, and Amy's passion for justice and truth. The letters came regularly now. Sarah wrote about her professors and classmates, about internships with major corporations that wanted to hire her before she even graduated. Maria sent updates about her research projects and the Children's Hospital, where she volunteered. Jessica shared photos of her artwork being displayed in student galleries. Amy called every Sunday with stories about her journalism classes and the articles she was writing. They all sent money when they could, small amounts from work-study jobs and paid internships. "For groceries, Mama Emily," Sarah's notes would say, "because we know you're still not eating enough." They knew her too well, these daughters of her heart. Emily would sit in her empty apartment, reading their letters over and over, feeling a mixture of pride and profound loneliness. She had raised them to be independent, to chase their dreams without looking back. She had succeeded perhaps too well. They were flying now, soaring toward futures she had helped make possible, and she was exactly where she had started, alone in a small town, working at a diner, counting every penny. But as she looked at their photos on her refrigerator, graduation pictures, college acceptance letters, artwork reproductions, newspaper clippings, Emily knew she had chosen correctly. Love had never been about holding on. It had been about giving them wings, even when it meant watching them fly away from her. What Emily didn't know was that her girls had never stopped thinking about her. In dorm rooms and libraries across the country, 4 young women were making plans that would soon transform their Mama Emily's life forever. 12 years after that fateful rainy night, Emily Parker sat alone in her weathered kitchen chair, sipping tea that had long since gone cold. At 38, she looked older than her years. The constant worry, the physical demands of working multiple jobs, and the emotional weight of watching her daughters succeed from afar had carved lines around her eyes and silver streaks through her brown hair. But there was something peaceful about her solitude now, a quiet satisfaction that came from knowing she had done something truly meaningful with her life. The diner had finally closed permanently 6 months ago, unable to compete with the new fast food chains that had moved into Millbrook. Emily now worked at the grocery store during the day and cleaned office buildings at night, still stretching every dollar, but managing to keep her tiny apartment above the hardware store. The letters from her girls came less frequently now. They were busy building the lives she had made possible, and Emily understood that this was how it should be. Sarah had graduated summa cum laude from Harvard and was now working for a major investment firm in New York. Her starting salary was more than Emily had made in 5 years combined. Maria was completing her residency at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, already showing promise as a pediatric surgeon. Jessica's artwork was being featured in galleries across New England, with critics praising her raw emotional honesty and triumphant depictions of human resilience. Amy had landed a position with the Washington Post as an investigative reporter, her articles exposing corruption and giving voice to the voiceless. Emily kept every newspaper clipping, every announcement, every photo they sent. Her refrigerator had become a shrine to their achievements, and she would stand before it sometimes, marveling at how 4 scared little girls had become these extraordinary women. The evening of their return began like any other. Emily had finished her shift at the grocery store and was preparing for her cleaning duties when she decided to sit, for just a moment, rest her aching feet, and drink 1 cup of tea before heading out into the night. The apartment was quiet except for the tick of an old clock and the distant sound of traffic on Main Street. That's when she heard it, a low, powerful rumble growing louder as it approached her street. Emily frowned, setting down her teacup. Expensive cars didn't come to this part of Millbrook. The sound was foreign, out of place, like a spaceship landing in a wheat field. She moved to the window and peered down at the street below. What she saw made her heart stop. A sleek black SUV with tinted windows was pulling up directly in front of the hardware store. The vehicle looked like something from a movie, all polished chrome and elegant lines, probably worth more than she had ever earned in her entire working life. Emily's hands began to tremble. Her first thought was that something terrible had happened to one of her girls. Why else would such an expensive car appear on her doorstep? Maybe there had been an accident, and someone was coming to deliver devastating news in person. The SUV's engine died, and an eerie silence fell over the street. Emily watched, frozen with fear and anticipation, as the driver's door opened and a man in a dark suit stepped out. He moved with the crisp efficiency of a professional chauffeur, walking quickly to the rear of the vehicle. Emily's breath caught in her throat as the back doors opened simultaneously. 4 figures stepped out onto the sidewalk, and for a moment, Emily's mind couldn't process what she was seeing. These weren't the officials she had feared. These were young women, tall, confident, elegantly dressed in business suits and designer clothes that spoke of success and sophistication. But something about their movements, the way they looked up at her building with a mixture of excitement and nervousness, stirred a memory deep in Emily's heart. The oldest woman had Sarah's determined posture. The second had Maria's thoughtful way of scanning her surroundings. The third moved with Jessica's artistic grace. And the youngest had Amy's eager energy, barely contained. Emily's knees went weak. "It can't be," she whispered to the empty room. "It can't be them." But as she watched, the 4 women turned toward each other, exchanging glances and smiles that spoke of shared secrets and long-anticipated plans. They moved toward the building's entrance with purpose, and Emily could hear their footsteps on the stairs, footsteps that echoed with the memory of 4 little girls running up these same steps to share news about school or ask for help with homework. Emily's hands shook as she moved toward her apartment door. She could hear voices in the hallway now, familiar voices that had grown deeper and more confident, but still carried the inflections she had memorized over 10 precious years. "Are you sure she's home?" That was Maria's voice, steady and analytical. "Her shift ends at 5:30. She's always home by now." "Sarah, ever practical and observant. What if she doesn't recognize us?" "Jessica, still the emotional heart of the group. She'll know us." Amy, now confident where she had once been shy. "Mothers always know." Emily pressed her back against the door, tears streaming down her face. They were here. After 2 years of sparse letters and brief phone calls, they were actually here. But why? And why did they look so successful? So polished and professional? A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. Not the aggressive pounding of bill collectors or the hesitant tap of neighbors needing favors, but a soft, respectful knock that somehow conveyed both respect and anticipation. "Mama Emily?" Sarah's voice, unmistakable despite its new maturity. "We know you're home. We can see your light under the door." Emily's sob caught in her throat. She reached for the doorknob with trembling fingers, paused for a moment to wipe her eyes, and slowly opened the door. For beautiful women stood in her narrow hallway, their faces glowing with joy and something else, something that looked almost like relief. They had come home. After achieving everything Emily had dreamed possible for them, they had come back to her. "Mama Emily," Amy said, her voice breaking slightly on the familiar name. Emily couldn't speak. She could only stare at these incredible women, her daughters, her greatest achievement, her heart walking around outside her body, and try to understand why they were here, why they looked like they had conquered the world, and why they were looking at her with expressions of pure love mixed with something that might have been gratitude. "We have something for you," Maria said softly, reaching into her purse. "Something we've been planning for a very long time," Jessica added, her eyes bright with barely contained excitement. Sarah stepped forward, and Emily could see that her oldest girl, her fierce protector, was fighting back tears. "Mama Emily," she said, "it's time to take care of you the way you took care of us." That's when Emily saw the small silver key in Maria's outstretched hand, and her world began to shift in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. Emily stared at the silver key in Maria's palm as if it were a strange artifact from another world. Her mind struggled to process the scene unfolding in her tiny apartment. For successful women in expensive clothes, standing in her space, filled with second-hand furniture and mended belongings, looking at her with expressions of pure love and something that resembled reverence. "I don't understand," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible above the hammering of her heart. Sarah stepped closer, her business suit impeccable, but her eyes soft with the same vulnerability Emily remembered from that first night 12 years ago. "Mama Emily, when we left for college, we made each other a promise. We promised that as soon as we were able, we would repay the woman who gave us everything." "You don't owe me anything," Emily said quickly, backing away slightly. "You girls have worked so hard. You've earned everything you have." Amy shook her head, and Emily could see tears threatening to spill over. "We earned it because you made it possible. Every scholarship, every opportunity, every door that opened for us. It all started with a waitress who chose to love 4 scared little girls when no one else would." Jessica reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper, her hands trembling slightly. "Maria isn't the only one with a gift. We all have something for you." Emily looked from one beloved face to another, seeing the children they had been overlaid with the incredible women they had become. Maria was right. They had been planning this for a long time. Their success hadn't made them forget her. It had made them more determined to honor the sacrifice she had made. "The key," Maria said, pressing it into Emily's palm, "belongs to that SUV downstairs. It's yours now." Emily's legs gave out, and she sank into her old kitchen chair. "Girls, I can't accept something like that. Do you know how much that car must cost?" "Less than what you spent on us over 10 years, Sarah said matter-of-factly. "We calculated it once. Every meal, every piece of clothing, every school supply, every sacrifice you made. That car is just the beginning of paying you back." "But I never wanted to be paid back," Emily protested. "I did it because I loved you, because you needed someone to believe in you." "And we know that," Amy said, kneeling beside Emily's chair. "That's exactly why you deserve this. You gave without expecting anything in return, and now it's our turn to give." Jessica unfolded the paper in her hands, and Emily could see it was an official-looking document with legal letterheads and signatures. "This is the deed to a house, Mama Emily. A real house with a garden and enough bedrooms for all of us to visit whenever we want. It's in your name, completely paid for." Emily covered her face with both hands, overwhelmed by emotions too large for a small apartment to contain. How How did you manage all this? Sarah's working for one of the biggest investment firms in New York, Maria explained. She's already been promoted twice and makes more money than any of us dreamed possible. She bought the car. Sarah flushed slightly but stood straighter. I learned about business by watching you manage our household on nothing. Every skill I have, every instinct about making smart decisions, I learned it from you. Maria just finished her residency and got accepted for a fellowship in pediatric surgery. Amy continued. The hospital offered her a signing bonus specifically because of her research work. She bought the house. Maria nodded. I became a doctor because I watched you heal us with love when we were broken. Every child I help, every life I save, it all connects back to how you showed me that caring for others is the highest calling. Jessica's art is being shown in galleries from Boston to Los Angeles, Sarah added. Her painting series about the accidental family sold for more money than most people make in a year. She's handling the furnishing and decorating. Jessica wiped away tears. Every brushstroke, every image I create, comes from the beauty you helped me see even in our struggles. You taught me that art isn't about pretty things. It's about finding hope in the darkness and sharing it with the world. And Amy, Maria said with pride, just won a Pulitzer Prize for her investigation into the foster care system. Her articles have already led to policy changes in 3 states. She's taking care of all the legal paperwork for the house and setting up a foundation. Emily looked up through her tears at Amy, her baby, who had barely spoken for months when she first arrived and was now winning national awards for her voice. A Pulitzer Prize? Amy blushed but smiled. I learned to find my voice because you created a safe space for me to discover it. Every story I tell, every injustice I expose, it comes from understanding what it feels like to be invisible and knowing that everyone deserves to be seen. But girls, Emily said, her voice breaking, I'm just a waitress. I clean offices. I don't deserve all this. You're not just anything, Sarah said firmly. You're the woman who saw potential where everyone else saw problems. You're the mother who chose us when no one else wanted us. You're the reason we're standing here today as successful women instead of statistics in the system. Amy reached into her own bag and pulled out a manila folder thick with photographs and documents. We've been documenting our journey, Mama Emily. Every achievement, every milestone, every moment of success. Because none of it means anything if we can't share it with you. She opened the folder, and Emily saw photographs of Sarah accepting awards at Harvard, Maria in her surgical scrubs after her first successful operation, Jessica standing beside one of her paintings in a prestigious gallery, Amy receiving her Pulitzer Prize. But in every photo, there was something else, a small framed picture of all 5 of them together, visible in dorm rooms, on office desks, in apartment windows. We carry you with us everywhere, Maria said softly. Every decision we make, every challenge we face, we ask ourselves, what would Mama Emily do? How would she handle this? You're not just our past. You're part of everything we'll ever accomplish. Emily stood on shaking legs, looking at these 4 extraordinary women who had once been broken children huddled outside her diner window. The circle was complete now. The love she had poured into them without thought of return had come back to her multiplied beyond anything she could have imagined. The house is ready for you to move into immediately, Jessica said. It's beautiful, Mama Emily. Big windows that let in lots of light, a kitchen where we can all cook together when we visit, and a garden where you can grow anything you want. And you'll never have to work again unless you choose to, Sarah added. We've set up accounts to cover all your expenses, your health care, everything. You took care of us. Now let us take care of you. Emily looked around her tiny apartment, at the refrigerator covered with their achievements, at the old furniture she had collected piece by piece, at the space that had housed the most important years of her life. Then she looked at her daughters, successful, confident, loving women who had never forgotten the waitress who believed in them. When do we go see this house? She asked, and 4 faces lit up like Christmas morning. As they helped her pack her few belongings, Emily realized that her story had never been about sacrifice at all. It had been about investment. Every dollar spent, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt had been an investment in love. And like all good investments, it had grown beyond her wildest dreams. The SUV pulled away from the hardware store for the last time, carrying Emily toward a future she never could have imagined. In the back seat, surrounded by her daughters, she understood that she had been wrong about one thing. Love always returns. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes it comes in forms you never expected. But it always comes home.